Thanks for coming, everyone. My name is Freddy Martinez. I am, well, you'll see that on the next slide. But my talk is about detecting IMSI catchers. The motivation here is that we've been talking about IMSI catchers in this community area for, maybe half a decade now. And my goal here is, you can build your own IMSI catchers for about $700 now, $600. Who's building their own IMSI catchers? Really? You're not? Me neither. So you can build your own IMSI catcher for a couple $100, and the detection and counter surveillance stuff is way behind. So the motivation here is to bring the counter surveillance back to, we're going to catch up. And that's the goal here. The idea is centered around political protests, because the types of things that IMSI catchers can do are very important for like activists. So if you're at a political protest and someone's running an IMSI catcher and is like sniffing all your cell phone communication or is socially mapping the network, that's problematic, and it reduces the ability for people to participate in democratic processes. So that's the motivation here. And also, we're going to talk about things that are cheap, easy to use, and practical, right? Like a lot of us here in this room could probably run a software-defined radio, but I am not going to be running around a protest with a laptop and an SDR plugged in. That's not going to happen. So, yeah, let's get into it. So, a little bit about me. I'm a physicist, and I'm a SysAdmin. Vice called me a skinny, fidgety 27-year-old. Thank you, Vice. Some of the work that we've done has been featured in Ars Technica, Al Jazeera, things like that. And I am also an anarchist, and I've been working with leftist organizations for a long time. So the things that we are involved in require security, require information. It requires understanding the threats that we're facing. And for a long time, that knowledge has been lacking. So one of the things that I want to do is merge the political world and the information security world and put these things together in a way that is going to achieve our goals. So the problem. So in Ukraine, the police obtained tower dumps and sent mass text messages to these people like, you're participating in a protest. That's bad, and is essentially trying to scare people from being involved in things that are relevant to them. In Miami, the Miami Police Department obtained stingrays during this. So there was a huge, large-scale protest against these free trade agreements, and so they bought stingrays specifically to spy on the activists. And then afterwards, they went to the city council and was like, "Give us money to, because we bought this stingray from Harris Corporation." And then in Germany, we've gotten reports that local police are lending each other stingrays around political protests. So there's this group that's developing IMSI Cure, which is an Android application to detect IMSI catchers. They have documented this sort of work that's happening. So these are not like theoretical problems. These are actually happening. So if you don't believe me, just do a little bit of... this stuff is happening, and to avoid it would be to ignore the scale of the problem. Okay, so capabilities. Voice intercept, text message intercept, gathering of IMSIs, which is your phone number, plus some other stuff. I'm not going to go into the technical details about how IMSI catchers work, so then dial number records, who you're calling, duration of calls, that sort of stuff. And then you can also do things like man in the middle, send messages from Mike's phone or whatever, like as Mike instead of as whatever. So this is like the scale is like essentially if you're sending an unencrypted call or text, like someone is going to sit there and could do all sorts of nefarious things. Okay, so last year, the group at Tobias Singo and Carson No and all of those that group did reverse engineering of Qualcomm chipsets at CCC last year. So they were released Snoop Snitch, really great work. I myself came to DEF CON 22 last year, and I was really interested in IMSI Catchers. Specifically, how do I get into the baseband of these IMSI Catchers? And so I just started filing a bunch of lawsuits. I think Chicago police told me that my requests are the only thing they work on full time. Like one guy said, like, this is all I do for 40 hours a week. So yeah, my idea was like, I'm gonna take a software-defined radio. I'm gonna walk around, protests, and like look for changing transmission channels, look for new broadcasts, things like that. It's impractical for three reasons. If you're a protester and you're walking around with a laptop, the police are just gonna like smash your shit. If you're also, I didn't really know how to run like a lot of the Wireshark tools and stuff like that. So I obviously go to the Wireless Village and learn some of that stuff if you're interested. And the other reason that it's impractical is that like it reduces your ability to function and actually be an activist type of thing. So that was the idea. That was like the last year. Over this year, we've been learning about this DRT technology. It's a Boeing subsidiary, and what they can do, and this is like real-time location tracking. It is breaking. You could break hundreds of cell phones encryptions in under a second, and it was developed with a CIA help. The NSA runs this stuff. I think they collected like 80 million records on Norwegians. Ali Winston had a great report out this morning, so go read it if you're interested. But essentially, they're collecting this stuff, and this is local police departments that could break cell phone encryption in under a second, which is extremely problematic. Whether or not they're doing that is we don't know, but they've been doing this for a decade. So there are new documents out today. You can go look for them or talk to me after the talk. Okay, so now we want to do counter surveillance. The requirements are going to be pretty easy, right? You're an activist. You're worried about surveillance. What do? First, you need to start with something that's cheap. A lot of us don't have money. It's just the truth. We also want something that's easy to use or commercial off the shelf. It has to be within, I don't know, a couple $100, maybe $50 or so. And it has to be low barrier to entry. What I mean is easy to use, right? Like, again, that idea of walking around with a software-defined radio isn't going to work because there's maybe 3 of us that could do this type of work in Chicago, and they're all in this room, right? So this is what we want, right? We want low barriers to entry. So how do we do this? And I'm going to give you real examples of things that we've done. Because this is like, okay. So counter surveillance. How do we do counter surveillance? The first step is that activists know that we're being surveilled. This is like a part of the function of control, right, that the police have. They are going to monitor everything you're doing. That includes your Facebook, whatever. We know that they're doing this, but when we pick up their surveillance, you don't want to tip your hand. You don't want your adversary to know what you're doing. This is like rule number 1 of counter surveillance. One of the things that's great is that we live in these cities that we function in, so we know our operating environments. We know which alley to run down, and we know which train station has the least number of cameras. So one of the things that you need to know when you want to do practical cell phone counter surveillance is, what does your city look like? And that includes your GPS maps. It includes your cell phone tower surveillance. So when I'm expecting a protest to go around, I work downtown. I have worked in downtown for a couple of years. I have a map of every possible cell phone tower, and I've done this for months at a time. So if I think that someone is going to be like doing some kind of IMSI catching, I know what the baseband looks like. So this is a key portion, right? You don't want someone to be setting up on you, so you have to set up on them early. This is like a thing to do, right? So what I would say is if you're interested in catching IMSI catchers, show up an hour before, show up a day before, and take your basebands. And then when things are happening, you're not surprised, right? Like you might catch an IMSI catcher, you might not, but you know what to look for because you don't have any anomaly. Any anomaly will tell you something, but if you don't have a baseband, then it's basically useless. You're just kind of speculating in the wild here. And we don't want to do that. We're like rigorous, right? We want to be sort of scientists, right? So yeah, show up early and take notes. Evasion. So last year, there was a huge solidarity march with the people of Palestine during the latest assault on the Gaza Strip. So one of the things that we arranged to do is we had a pirate box. They're essentially wireless, like APs. And by the way, shout out to the person who's running a pirate box at DEF CON. I saw that. So essentially, it's a chat client, Wi-Fi only device. You connect, you can talk, you can do anonymous file uploads and downloads. It's really cool. It's really cheap. It's like $30 or something. Piratebox.cc is their webpage. And we were able to sort of, operate without any kind of cell phone communication at all. So if you're interested, pirate boxes are a great way to hide from any kind of surveillance, including like your telco. So another thing that we did was we were supporting a Black Lives Matter protest, and you can't see that right now. But so what happened is we had a person off site who was listening to the police scanner and was telling us like where the police were moving. And we were doing this all over Signal, TechSecure. And what was funny is that over the police scanner, we heard this update, like they might be monitoring CW2, which is their citywide thing that they use for crowd control. And we were able to pick that up too. And, we were able to move through the city without any problems, right? Because we were able to essentially operate as if the police were blind to our movements. So again, if you're an activist or you're just a person in general and you're not using Signal, you're really fucking up here. For high security needs, get an iPod Touch with Signal and basically only connect to wireless devices that you trust. You can do the same thing with a Moto E, the Android version, right? They're like $90 now, I think. Check out all the components, like they have accelerometers that can actually, like, if you have an accelerometer with a Moto E or any kind of device, it can pick up your, like, how you walk, and that can be used to, like, biometrically track you. So buy these, like, really cheap burner phones and rip out everything, rip out the Bluetooth, rip out anything that's not a wireless device or a GSM radio. So that's really like important. That's what we've been doing a lot. We love these Moto E's because they're so cheap and they work. And they have the Qualcomm baseband chipset. So use those. And then in China, one of the things that was reported is they use FireChat, this wireless mesh network. You can check that out. The problem with mesh networking is that they don't scale very well. But if you've got like 30 people that you want to communicate with, kind of pseudo-anonymously, mesh networks are great for this sort of stuff. So detection is hard. Again, like I said, you have to show up early. You have to really understand your operating environment. So it's a little bit hard to see over here, but there's this Richard J. Daley Center. This is a federal building. There is a big plaza that is used there for political rallies. What has happened before, when we were a little bit less rigorous, we had a political rally in February of 2014, and an unmarked squad car pulls up. And in Chicago, they're unmarked in that they're unmarked in that they, like, obviously don't show police colors, but they have a special license plate that they all use. So we know it's a police car. And as soon as it parks, some GSM broadcast starts coming out of the car. This was the first type of event that we had seen. And we were not ready for this sort of thing. So the first thing that happens is someone runs to the police car and says, "You're running a Stingray," and then the car drives off, right? This is not what you want to do. Don't do this. This is like tipping. This is what I said. You're tipping your hand. But we've seen similar things like at other Black Lives Matter protests. And so this is like kind of a map of what I was doing, like just, again, surveilling basebands, just I need to know what downtown Chicago GSM looks like. So we've been doing this for a while. And then on top of it, wrong laptop. On top of it, I've taken Moto E's, I've rooted them, prepaid SIM card, I've installed Snoop Snitch, which again is the group that's done the most work about IMSI catching. And they've released this open source application for Android, and that's great. You might install it. Everyone in this room might know how to run Snoop Snitch, but that doesn't tell you anything, right? You actually have to go out into communities that are doing this sort of stuff, doing this sort of work, and teach them, like, what are the risks here? What does an IMSI catcher tell you? Why would you even care that an IMSI catcher is present? So we've done that. We've been doing trainings, across the country. I see a guy from ACLU. I won't say your name, but like maybe if I was with them and they knew I was going to a protest, I would give them the phone or give a neutral third party the phone, right? This is what you want to do. You want to be able to operate, but you also want to have someone that's watching your back. Journalists or legal observers, yeah, exactly. So these are the kinds of people that you want watching your back. A journalist would be good. Exactly. Okay. Hardware detection. I've been working on so there's this company that sells FONAs. They're 2G microcontrollers. Essentially, what you do is you get direct baseband access as serial modems. They're only in 2G, but you can access it directly. And so I've been working on a little bit of code. It's essentially a logger, right? You log all the GSM information that you can. You can query neighboring cell phone towers. You can query what ciphering mode is used. So you just write some code. This is more like a hardware hacker level type of talk or type of thing that you would do. But you can totally do this. Unfortunately, it's not in like 3G or 4G or LTE, but yeah, if you have direct baseband access, you have so much more information, which is why Snoop Snitch and all these tools are like so powerful. Okay, future work. As I mentioned, we understand these risks, but we're technical. The people that are most at risk for surveillance are not technical. They're poor people. They're immigrants. They're sex workers. They're undocumented workers. They're people of color, and they don't know these risks. All right, so I can sit here and tell you that there are tools to dump your cell phone forensics, but that doesn't tell you anything. If you talk to someone who's been stopped and frisked by Chicago police or NYPD, and you tell them that these things exist, that might get them to encrypt their phone or something. So our goal here, or our task, is to go and teach these things to what we would call maybe common people, but just everyone, right? Because other people, don't know these things, and we do. So it's on us to really do some mutual aid and assist others. Find people that you trust and give them Moto E's, like legal observers, journalists. Like root the phone and give it to them. It's maybe an hour's worth of work, but it will tell you a lot about what's happening in your city and like really nefarious activities that the police departments do, because they do it. The cost of surveillance is only going down for cell phones, and it's really on us to make it more expensive, and that means like making detection easier. And if we make detection easier, then it's only going to drive up the cost of surveillance, and that's what we want. We want to raise the barrier to entry for police departments or FBI or whoever is doing the surveilling. And then if we had access to like 4G, LTE, microcontrollers, we could do a lot more interesting things. Right now, that's not happening outside of like Snoop Snitch and things like that. I will mention one last thing, is that governments are getting into the space of MC catching. I don't have $7 million for a commercial solution. I don't know anyone who does. If you have $7 million, come talk to me after. Um, but if we can push these things, so yeah, $7 million right now. In 5 years, it's not going to be $7 million. It's going to be more like several $1,000s, right? And that's a lot more approachable. So what we want to do is we want to be those people that are hacking on the software side or on the personal. So we want to hack, right? We want to hack such that it makes it so much cheaper and easier to detect this cell phone surveillance that it makes it impossible for them to operate. And that's only going to happen if if we actually talk about these issues and really actually go out into our communities and do these things. I think that's about it. I have a bunch of references. And I do want to thank everyone from Southside Hackerspace Chicago, the Crypto Village organizers, and my attorney, Matt Topic, and everyone else that's on this slide. Questions? You're talking about pirate boxes specifically, or?
Regular, any sort of access points, going to have a unique identifier.
Yeah.
Do these have something similar? You can see that, it showed up here one day, and then it showed up here the next day.
You're talking about like if cell phone towers have their own?
Well, do IMSI Catchers specifically have a way that you can profile IMSI Catchers?
Oh, yeah. Do you have a, so the thing that they can do is they can define all this stuff in software. So there's like a lot of randomization that they can do. So like with an IMSI catcher specifically, like let's say I'm running an IMSI catcher, I wouldn't set it to like AT&T, or I wouldn't use that. I would just use like New Zealand or something. And that's actually like a great way to detect them, because they want to be so different that you wouldn't mistake it for an actual AT&T tower. So it actually works out in your favor. So they do have some kind of like profiling information, but actually what they do to evade detection actually tells you a lot about what they're doing.
Hello? All right, everybody. It is 5 o'clock. Technically, it's quitting time. If you could wrap up what you're doing right now,
Yeah.
and then exit the door, please, that would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah. So the question is, like, one of the things that IMSI catchers do is that they force your phone to transmit at like full power. What other hardware defining attributes are there? So actually, that's so with IMSI catchers specifically, that's an active attack. That's an active. There are two modes: passive and active. The active one is where it actually forces transmission to you. That's actually a lot easier to observe. The passive side is where they just kind of like set up outside of an embassy and will just set up an IMSI catcher and see everyone coming and going. That's actually a lot harder to detect. And what I suspect is happening is that it's a lot more passive surveillance that's happening, not this active stuff. So what you really need, this is why I like setting up early and doing this, you understand what environment you're operating in is important, because like on the time scales that we're interested in, like, the police are not going to set up a day early on you, so you just set up early on them. And they're going to show up an hour before, or maybe 30 minutes into the action, and then you have that. So we don't, what I would think is that there's not active attacks that are happening. It's probably just like a lot more passive and just social networking of, who's going into what. So in Chicago specifically, the protesters are tracked by the gang intelligence unit, and that's also the case in LAPD, I believe, that they do this stuff. So like the LAPD is going to treat you like an organized gang or whatever, but they're not yeah, so the point is that they're going to do like really passive stuff because they're only interested in socially networking or how does this map look about who's talking to who. So if you understand like how they do their investigations into protesters, then that's why they're doing it passively because they want to socially network people. They're not trying to like get you to like they're not trying to track you to your apartment because that's really expensive for them. Question. Oh, unknown environment? It's a good question. I don't know. I think I would leave it to someone in Vegas to like actually do that profile. But if it's like DEF CON, I don't know. Going to DEF CON with an IMSI catcher is probably like going to Chernobyl with like a Geiger counter or something like that.
Right. For those people who just walked in, we are closing. So you can come back tomorrow morning. I'm sorry to kick you out. I know this is all awesome. I love it too.
Yeah.
It's time to close.
Yeah, so the question is like how have we been training activists to understand events?
Have some beer.
So far right now we haven't. So activists have this justifiable paranoia, right? Like I can't tweet these pictures, or I can't, or I open Facebook and it crashes, and it's got to be an IMSI catcher. Like that's not the case. So really, what actually we're more focused on is getting them to understand what the capabilities are, which is a little bit more difficult. Specifically for the trusted third parties that we have running our rooted snoop snitch phones, they don't really interpret. They just come to me and they're like, "How does this look? And does this look correct to you?" One of the people that I have running these things like walk around downtown a lot and they go by embassies, and they're always like, "My phone's alerting." I'm like, "Of course it's alerting. You just walk by, the Mexican consulate or something." So, but they understand that because they know that these things happen. Actually, a lot of what we have is just like false alerts or things that are explainable, like when you walk past the Mexican consulate and your phone starts alerting. So, but for the most part, right now, the case is that they come to people like me, and hopefully that's not going to be the case in a couple of years. But so far, that's where we are right now.
So, okay, but it's not like you wouldn't advise trying to teach non-technical activists. So how to
Yeah, the non-technical activists, probably the best thing you can do is like get them to use like Signal and stuff like that, and that's probably going to get them a better security posture than like trying to teach them the technical details of like what IMSI catchers do. Joel has a question. So there are different levels of alerts, and they like get like a warnings or like maybe medium level alerts, and it's probably a lot harder to get like a real, black or whatever. You're being wiretapped right now. So when I say alerting, I'm saying like people are getting like suspicious activity alerts. One last question. So the question is whether or not we're increasing the arms race by doing IMSI catching. I don't know. Like Harris Corporation is trying to buy like a bunch of IMSI catchers. So what does that tell you about it? It's probably they're trying to reverse engineer some of the stuff that's being developed in software. So if the question is about increasing the cost of doing things, like great. If it makes it more expensive for spies to be spying, because spies are going to spy, I'm all for it, because that's fine with me. I'm with it. If it is an arms race, because like all things that are technical are arms races, right? But I think 100 years from now, if we're talking about wiretapping, like wiretapping used to be so easy you could actually like literally plug wires in and read the voice, right? And now it's a little bit more difficult. It's more, there are different technical limitations. So if it's about increasing the capabilities of your adversary, then I'm all for it. They're still going to find their money. Like the FBI is still going to get their money to, wiretap people. Like that's always going to happen. But if it makes it a lot harder for them to do it, then I'm all for it because the FBI is horrible. Last, okay, yeah, Cooper, go ahead. Actual last question.
Are there any indications that that law enforcement agencies are worried about MC catchers, or like that's just off their radar?
Ask me again in a year or two. No, so the question is whether or not like police are worried about MC catchers. I don't think so because even like the capabilities of MC catchers are very compartmentalized in police departments. They don't want other cops to talk about like to know. Like if you're like a beat cop or something and you're not in like gang intelligence, they don't want you to know that they can like sniff numbers out of the air because you might talk to your spouse about it or your partner. So even police don't want people to know about this stuff to their own culture. So yeah, it's very segmented. Maybe there's I don't know, maybe 40 people who really do like surveillance, like with MC catchers in your major local police department. But no, they don't even know about this stuff. So MC catchers is probably not going to get to them in maybe like a couple years. Yeah, so we want to be ahead of the curve here. Yeah. Thank you, everyone.